people start to attend and log in. There you go. I can see people starting to filter in. We'll wait a minute or two while everyone starts to log on. But welcome to those people who are joining us right now. For those who aren't familiar, my name's Cam. This is Paul. We'll do all the introductions in a second, but thank you very much for taking the time to join us. While people are logging on, to give a bit of background, if you're not familiar with this format, you can submit questions as we're going with the Q&A function, and you can also upvote other people's questions in there. And we'll also be opening up, it'll be about 25 minutes long. We'll be opening up at the last kind of after that for 5 minutes or so to answer your questions, and we will take them in the stride as we're going as well. It's actually filling up quite fast, so I think we might kick off on time for once. And to start with, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land in which we gather and their elders, past, present, and emerging. It's a wonderful tradition that's been passed down to many people of storytelling in this country, and I would like to acknowledge that that's a main way that we communicate and the benefits that that brings to us as a culture, especially now when we've all begun to settle into this kind of this new normal. I think it's really been a strange way to, I was just talking to Paul about it, of you spend hours and hours and hours on Zoom or your own webinar meeting of choice, and you find yourself kind of spending your entire day with a machine and not necessarily feeling that come back to what you're doing with people. So on that note, I'd like to introduce our panelist for today, which is Paul Findlay. Paul, I always love to start with that first question of who are you and how are you?
Hi, Cam. Thanks so much. It's great to be here. My name's Paul Findlay. I am a father of two and a husband. I have a multinational training company. I'm chairman of the OrgDev Institute, and some other interests in my life. Apparently, I have an inability to say no, which will, and everything seems like a great idea. So that's me, and I'm super grateful to be here and share my experiences and some of the science behind it all.
I think that's how I convinced you to come on this this webinar, isn't it, Paul? I kind of said, well, I've got a great idea if you jump on Friday morning, and we'll get you going from there.
Exactly. It's like, yeah, that's a great idea, Ken. And here we are. Which the thing is, the more I say yes to, the more grateful I am, because I get to learn from and share with more people in more different contexts. And so whilst I sometimes think I'm a little bit silly, I'm also super grateful that I embrace everything and boots all in.
I think, and for those who aren't familiar with it, Paul's and his company have developed this really interesting way of breaking apart how people interact and how people approach work. If you signed up for the webinar, you would have been flicked through the Reach Profile survey to see where you fall on a lot of those spectrums. If you haven't, it'll be dropped in the chat now for you to do that, so that you can see where you fall with a lot of the things we're talking about today. But I think one of the main things that and I'll bring up just a diagram of where we all kind of fall at the moment. But before I do that, I wanted to touch base, Paul, with the transition to remote work, because it's been a month and a bit now when we found the new normal. What has that transition looked like for yourself and your company, but also what you've seen with the people that you work with?
Yeah, it's a fascinating journey for all of us, and I jump on calls with people constantly. And in fact, we were commenting just before, I think it was about a 12-hour day of almost non-stop calls on either Teams or Zoom yesterday, from 6 a.m. till 6 p.m. And it's an interesting thing, isn't it, where we all, in inverted commas, all of us work from home a certain amount of time. Most of us have distributed teams. I know in my normal life, I have people I speak to in about 5 countries on any given day. And so it's always been an element of remote, but when it transitions to 100% remote, all of a sudden it feels different. And there's the important nuances that you connect with and share with people and develop that real culture that all of a sudden seems harder to do because it's gone from 8% to 100%. So I see the impact on my on myself personally, and I see the impact on my team, as we have got fewer different alternatives, and we don't have that water cooler chat that brings us together and socializes the norms and the common understanding. Everything's always filtered through very specific medium and more pointed communication.
I think that the water cooler chat is a really interesting one, because that, for me, if I jump over to this, here we are. I ended up somewhere around this kind of high coach counselor area, and I have found myself. It wasn't until you pointed it out to me when we were talking before this that I just keep spending all this time on endless video calls with people and trying to understand where they're at, what's happening in their lives, and how I can help them with the work that I'm doing at the moment. And then I end up spending all that time and getting no work done, because I've got the giant list of to-dos after all of these meetings, but I'm still accepting all these meetings and talking to people for hours and hours and hours, and not feeling like I'm getting anywhere.
Right. It's an interesting thing. I guess we should put a bit of context around this four colors grid here. So at the top, we've got two axes. We've got a vertical and a horizontal. When people are toward the top of the vertical, they're very people-oriented in their thinking and very expressive. So they're the folks that find themselves chatting and sharing and engaging, and asking about people. And every time a situation comes up, they're thinking about it through a people lens. Down the bottom, on the other hand, we've got the people that don't really feel comfortable sharing their personal life when they get to work on a Monday morning or start their day. They are focused on what's next, on what they need to do, as opposed to how everybody is and sharing about themselves personally. On the left to right is our relational drive, which on the left-hand side it's the people that are thinking oriented and very methodical in the way they approach things. So they like to have the detail and the really clear understanding of circumstance and context. On the right-hand side, it's the people that are action-oriented and highly urgent. So they take a big picture view, and they're always driving forward and asking what's next. So that's the context of our 2x2 grid. When you put that into the four quadrants, we've got some nice simple language: counselor, coach, driver, and advisor. So yeah, you were sharing that as a coach profile, you find yourself queuing up your day with seeking ways to connect and engage with people like you normally do, because that chat and the engagement and that social connection and understanding of people's needs and what you can do to help them meet those needs is a really significant internal driver for you. And it's interesting. Do you find that you look at your calendar and like you said, you've got all of those engagements, and normally the chat with people gives you energy, and if you finish your day with a series of video calls, do you find yourself as energized as you would normally be?
No, not at all. That's actually something that I've been really struggling with, I think, in this kind of scenario. Is I would normally, and I feel really sorry for the marketing team, because I would normally pull people into a meeting and start running around with a whiteboard and talking to people to get that energy and to get that drive and focus. And when I try and do that virtually, I'm a bit at a loss at the moment for how I'm actually supposed to get that drive.
And it's an interesting thing. So you know that you've structured your life like we all do, to have the balance of things that we gravitate toward naturally. So you gravitate toward people and people-oriented things with a strong sense of urgency. And yet, conversely, when you and so you're seeking to fill those things, but you can't get the balance right, because you finish after such a long day of having the closest equivalent that you can have, and it doesn't feel the same. And all of us are in the same boat. Now the thing is, as we have a primary style. So in your case, it's coach, but we all move around the quadrants in different situations and at different times. And you're finding yourself unable to fill all the gaps. But also the people on the bottom yellow quadrant there that are relatively guarded and relatively task oriented, they also need human connection. And it's really easy for us in this flat environment where we're talking through to everybody through a screen, and that's the only choice that we've got, to drop the ball on meeting the needs of different people's styles and communications. Where sometimes even we all crave human connection. We all need to be part of something bigger than ourselves, and it's very easy to feel like, oh, that person, I can just ping them a message and they'll be fine. But they need it too, and it's a really, really easy thing to forget especially when we can't see people.
It's actually, there was a story the other day that I was looking at with I think I mentioned this to you when I was trying to understand how some of this worked, where I'm used to having people kind of give me physical cues for when they want to go from the part of a conversation that is about how are you and how are you doing, to the part of the conversation that is, what work do we need to get done, how are we going to get it done. And I have a group of people that help me get all the work done here at Go One. I'm very, very grateful to them. And my response normally is to spend a bit of time talking to them and then list out all of the actions that we've got to go through, break them down, work on them. That then translates to me posting in our Slack channel a giant list of things that people need to do, attributing their names to them, and including myself, and then going, any questions, let me know what I can help with. We can jump on a quick call.
Right. And it's that warmth and the engagement and where I'm aligning people onto this shared vision and goal that we're driving forward, that all of a sudden you're conscious, I haven't been delivering that. I've been delivering comparatively a set of tasks with a person's name next to it. And that to a lot of people can feel very clinical and very cold. Like I'm just part of a to-do list. And it's difficult for you to be mindful about the fact you've just turned your team that loves and engages with the warmth and the people orientation into feeling like they're Cam's to-do list. And it's those things that we need to be really mindful about. Now, the different people have different preferences, and you can purposefully adapt and engage with people differently based on those things, which is what at the end of the day keeps people's mental health in a good place. So I guess where I'm going really, if you find yourself inadvertently making people feel like they're a task executor as to part of an engaged and connected team, that makes them easily feel more isolated. And making someone feel isolated or disconnected in a world where we are more isolated and more disconnected from the humanness that we normally have, it's a very important thing to be mindful of and purposefully adapt your style and your approach and your communication.
I hear that really well from a conceptual level, and I've just thrown this up again because I would actually like to dive into the tangibles, I guess. I get what you're saying, but how does that work at the moment for teams, and how does that work for the way that we're approaching things? Because I know that if I'm talking to some of my more technical team, throwing them a list of tasks and a timeline makes them feel a little bit less stressed because they're actually know the expectations and they feel quite confident pushing back. But not to put a blanket over them, because there's some of them in there which want to have a dialogue about it constantly. So how are different people going through this, I guess, as a team at the moment?
Okay, so there's two different parts there. In terms of the team aspect and how does it come to life in a functional way, the magic at this moment is to truly manage by strengths. Now, I'm referring to the Marcus Buckingham version of strengths. So the strengths are the things that when you do them, they make you feel strong and they make you feel energized, compared to your weaknesses, which are the things that make you feel weak. It's not necessarily about confidence, but it's about the things that fill your tank. Now, if we have a look at the top half of that grid there, the people-oriented folks, blue and green, our coach and counselor quadrants there, it's very common that the people in those two quadrants gravitate naturally towards customer service roles. And in a normal environment, it's very easy for us to have everybody doing the same set of tasks in the customer service role. So everybody's answering phones, responding to chat, responding to emails. Now, in this environment, we've got some really interesting dynamics going on. So the coaches and the counselors, particularly when they're in their home environment, because they're so concerned about people and their loved ones around them, assuming that they're in a household with family, they very easily feel extra guilty from being busy when their family members are around, and they would rather, they feel they shouldn't be working, they should be focused on their family. So they have this underlying level of additional guilt and personal challenge. So while they've got those competing demands happening inside them, we can look at their personal lives and the scheduling of schooling or whatever other competing demands they have right now, and then we go left to right. Now, our coaches, for example, will benefit from having the conversations about people's needs and driving forward with the things that they can answer and respond to quickly. So they get a really good human connection and try and get a resolution right there and then. The counselors prefer detail. And if they have an opportunity to work through someone's situation, do some research, prepare a well-considered answer, and respond in writing, that will fill their tank. So we're in a situation where there's competing demands at home, competing emotional challenges, and we can now split the work differently. So if we said to the coaches, is there a way that we can schedule your time to be talking to people on the phones so you have the human connection and you can move things forward and get a resolution? And counselors, is there a way that we can give you the where you get to reflecting into detail and respond to people in writing? All of a sudden, we've got the customer service team providing the same function, but we're working with strengths, and so they feel like their tank is being filled as opposed to depleted and stretched. And it's those leadership decisions that we can make that really benefit our team and our team state of mind. And yet it's such a subtle difference. Does that make sense? Did I explain that well?
It does. Sorry, my computer decided to skip a slide instead of unmuting just then. It does, but I think the thing that's resonating for me is I'd love to hear how that's actually played out for you in personally in your role at the moment, and to get more of a tangible understanding of that.
Right. So we have in the training company, we have operational staff, sales staff, IT staff, and all the different teams. Now, one of our people normally works on reception, and look, she's the most vivacious, beautiful, friendly, warm person that you can have greet you when you walk in the door, and she manages all the facilities and the rooms and the catering, and everyone's like, oh my goodness, that was so lovely. Now, we clearly have no rooms and catering and no warm reception right now. Now, she also happens to have 3 children, and she's homeschooling. So what can that person do? One of the reasons that and how do we play to her strengths? And so she understands that she's contributing and she's doing work that she enjoys. One of the reasons she's really good at the job that she does is because she's really detail oriented. So things are always on time, things are always organized, and everybody's always looked after down to the nuances of the individual dietary needs, right? And so she has this really great detail orientation. In that world, we have tens of thousands of pages of training materials. So if you're going to give someone an opportunity to do something that they naturally enjoy because they love the detail and do it around their current work life and contribute, then she's able to dig into all that content, into the content, and give help improve the quality of what we have. And it works for her in an additional level because she has a people orientation. So while she's doing that work, she's thinking about the participants that she normally welcomes in and their experiences. And so she's working through, wow, that's going to be great for those people that I take care of the day that I can go back and take care of them. So it's currently completely unrelated to her role, but it's playing to her strengths. Now, conversely, I'm a completely different personality type. I'm the big picture, outcome-oriented guy, to the extent I often don't even know what day it is. I frequently forget how old I am because it's just not that relevant to me. I'm getting stuff done. And if I took it upon myself to work through thousands of pages of materials, I'd rather poke myself in the eye, and I would finish the day feeling profoundly depleted. And there's other people that work alongside the lady I've been referring to who have very similar personalities, but would also find that detailed work really depleting. So it's a matter of understanding people's strengths, tendencies, and what's going to make them feel good, and then dividing the work accordingly. Because we're no longer bound, we're not currently bound to the operational needs and operational norms. So while we're not bound to it, take advantage of it and give the people the things that make them feel good and contribute at the same time.
I find that's a really interesting shift looking at the future, because I know this isn't something that we had planned to talk about too much, but it is a question that just popped through for me. Was after this point, because we're never going to go back to the same that we were before. It's not like there'll be a stop point when suddenly everyone's back to normal work. We've now set the precedent for workplaces to have everyone at home if they need to, for people to have flexible jobs that allow them to move hours, because if you're going to work at the moment, that's what you kind of have to cope with. Right. How do you see that playing out in the next kind of era, I guess, in say 2 or 3 months from now, when some people are still in an office? What is that going to look like?
It's a great question, and I think we're going to find an environment where we recognize that the human contact gets a label like team time or connection time or something. And so instead of the workplace being the workplace, I think work will be work, and our need to connect is recognized as a thing that we all have in common, regardless of who we are and our personality types and our roles. There'll be a different mindset of, oh, I need team time, I'm coming into the office, as opposed to I need to work at home 2 days a week. I think it's going to bring people, it's going to give society and people more clarity on just how important our human connection really is, and it'll be recognized as a scheduled thing. So we currently have team building or social clubs or whatever, but you just go to work. And I think now we'll work and we'll go to be together and learn, and culture will become a more tactile and purposeful and valued thing by everybody. Is we know what it's like when you're all of a sudden a touch disconnected from the culture and the social norms and the understanding of who we are, as an organization.
That's actually a really interesting one, because if we're disconnected from the culture of a workplace or the culture of a group even, it can really lead to a lot of disconnects in the work that we do and the way we approach work. I know that even just joining this, so my work at Go1 for people's, context is part of a research project into how we can have better social outcomes through online learning. I'm part researcher, part manager, part a lot of things. But that meant that I was always a step sideways to a culture. And without the ability to sit in a room with people who are working on something, there was no way that I could understand their culture, especially as someone observing and working with them. And I see that being almost a conflict in the next point of some of the people that are really efficient and really feel really effective and rewarded working at home and working, or not necessarily working at home, but working remotely wherever they need to be, with some of the other types that prefer to be in a room to pull someone in and draw all over a whiteboard and compare notes. Is there an easy way to manage that? How do you balance that, I guess, is it?
Yeah, and I think it's funny. I was reflecting just as you were talking there, when you first introduced yourself on this session today, you said here at Go1. And it's like, yeah, isn't that funny? Here at Go One is currently your home office, and it'll be interesting if work shifts to an even greater extent than it was to stay remote, which I'm sure it will, depending the extreme it goes to. The important thing that you're talking about there is how do we still have that here at Go One, because this is an us, not me logging on to some tasks. And the answer to the question, I think, is that it's a matter of understanding people's needs and the strengths in diversity and the diversity of strengths, and helping people be conscious about, I work well in this way and I contribute best in this way. That is complemented by my other team members who approach things in a completely different way. Now, whilst I can go and execute really effectively, I need to first understand, and I'm going to value the time and the opportunity to go and get together and recognize that it's not just a meeting, it's not just a process, it's not just an office. This is where we connect and develop a common understanding, and then I can go and do my strengths, which I'm the example you gave, I'm very efficient at executing in my remote office, but I'm going to recognize that it's actually a really foundational building block to have a common understanding and see it differently. It's no longer going to be HR speak of culture is really important. It's like, yeah, what I actually understand that connection with my peers and my people and our why is the thing that binds me to my engagement to be productive and contribute. It's going to be easier to identify for everybody than it was.
I guess that's an interesting point that you raised around the even team building and culture in that point, because I know that some people view it as, oh God, here's 3 days of team building coming up when I could be working, and that it might be magnified, I guess, in the next step. How do you even broach that? I guess that dynamics for leaders at the moment.
Yeah, well, I think when people have their an absence of that connectedness, when we get to say, do you realize now that absence is really important and it creates an emptiness and a disconnect? So leaders and their team members have the perfect opportunity to say, culture and connectedness is now, you recognize its importance. So let's come together. Let's do it purposefully, and let's do it clearly, and let's do it consistently. And it's the moment in time that we have to make culture and team cohesiveness powerful and central, because we all recognize that we've missed it, and it is important. And previously, like you say, it's like, oh, I've got to go to that thing now. And oftentimes it ends up being better than people thought it would be. But when we are when we're told that that's going to happen, it'll now feel like a privilege and an opportunity and really important. Whereas previously it was just a thing someone scheduled, And so we have that moment where we all know it's important, and we can bring everybody together and galvanize a team in a way we've never been able to before. Because people now recognize that those things, when they're absent, are gaps. So now we can value them, and when we can value them, then we can focus on them and take advantage of the recognition of the value. So it's the perfect environment for us to create the culture.
We're approaching the end of the time that we had set aside, because I've just kind of gone straight into questions there. I'd like to I guess head towards the end by that. What you've just said sounds really hopeful, instead of the kind of narrative that I'm getting of stress and anxiousness and ping-ponging between either a lack of work at the moment or too much work. I don't know, I've got most of my friends have no job or have lost their job in the last month. And I don't think I'm ever going to have a time even just to have a Zoom with them, because I'm working so much to keep up with demand for this online side. I'd love to get your take on that narrative at the moment, for the narrative of hope, I guess, going forward with the situation that we're in.
Well, there's two really quick versions. One's the big picture of the economy and the global economy and humanity. on that lens, the best way to look at it is that every country is more has more history to look at, is better researched and has a better understanding of the global economy and how to do things purposefully to bring things back to life. And every government in every country will be doing that as proactively and purposefully as they possibly can. And whilst there's always stimulus and initiatives and things going on, if every single organization and country and individual, government and individual, is actively seeking to build and grow and recover. And that is what will see the world come back more quickly than ever before. The second thing is we see everybody innovating and adapting in a constructive and proactive way that's focused on people and safety and the economy and moving forward. And whilst there's certainly innovation all the time, there's currently a collective conscious of everybody about how do we recover everything, and it's all and how do we bring people back together, and how quickly can we do it, and how can we do it safely. And everybody has an outcome orientation. Whilst there's dark moments for everybody, where in reality we're all looking forward in a different way to ever before. If you ask anybody, if you have a chat with anyone, the conversation very quickly gets to looking forward. And if you think about 4 months ago, having a normal chat, people aren't looking forward; they're looking inward, or they're just doing. And so we have about 8 billion people currently looking forward with innovation and being supported by government. And so we'll have a good recovery.
Yeah, I think that's a great place for us to throw up the end graphic and say thank you for taking part, Paul. I find we always end up on a few tangents when we talk together, but it's been wonderful looking at the different scenarios that people are approaching in the different ways that we can break down, I guess, personality types. And I've learned a lot more about myself in this process, probably than I wanted to. But it is very useful. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Ken. I have enjoyed the journey with you as we've been chatting about it, and it's been great to get to know you over the last couple of weeks, and it's been an absolute privilege to be on. And thank you so much to Go One, and stay safe, everybody. We'll win. Thank you.
Awesome. Next time. We'll be looking at resilience. We'll be talking to some mental health professionals about resilience going forward. So if you want to join us in 2 weeks for that chat, we'd be really excited to have you back. But for now, I would like to say again, thank you so much, Paul. And I hope everyone stays safe, but also is able to learn a bit more about themselves from this and to look towards the future with a little bit more hope. So thank you so much.